Hello everyone, Diabetes II here. Today I'll be talking about the Dragon Warrior Randomizer 2025 Winter League. In this series of videos, the goal is to introduce each flag set for this upcoming event and discuss some of the approaches and strategies an experienced DWR player like myself might take. First, a brief overview of the league. Live racing will begin with 5 weeks of regular season matchups. Players will race in groups of 4 with points assigned depending on finish order, 5 points going to the winner. Group assignments during weeks 1, 2, and 4 are random, while assignments during weeks 3 and 5 will be positional depending on current standings entering those weeks. From there, the top 16 players qualify for playoff elimination rounds, with seeding determined by regular season point totals. Players will continue racing in groups of 4, with the top 2 finishers in each race advancing to the next round. 4 finals participants will face off in a 2-race series, with the fastest aggregate time determining the winner. Players of all skill levels are welcome to join. It is worth noting that all races are held with no prior knowledge of the seed, rotating flag sets for each week are non-standard compared to those usually raced, and various informational resources are available for all players in the DWR Discord. That is to say, newcomers and veterans alike may be facing new and unexpected challenges with less of an experience gap between them as in other formats. If participation as a player is not in the cards, we always have volunteer opportunities available to facilitate our live race broadcasts. Whether as a restreamer, race tracker, or commentator, we greatly appreciate the time and effort dedicated by our volunteers to make these shows happen. No experience is necessary, and we would be happy to get you up to speed should you offer your time. Participant signups are now open and will remain so until Friday, January 31st, 2025 at noon Eastern. A formal reveal of the participant field will be broadcast on Sunday, February 2nd, time to be determined. Regular season racing will begin immediately, with the Final Four to be concluded by the end of March. League launch and update shows, as well as most races, will be broadcast live at twitch.tv/DWRandomizer, and all relevant documents, participant resources, full race calendar, and standings are available via the DWR Discord community. Relevant links in the description below. Let's take a look at the Week 2 flags. Week 2 is titled Big Swamp, No Hurtmore, No Problem. A little on the nose, perhaps. This is the flag set and a highlighted list of differences from standard flags. So weapon prices are randomized and summer sale is active. Random XP and gold rewards from defeating enemies is enabled. The alternate run algorithm is on. Speed hacks, easy Charlock, no keys required, no Hurtmore, Big Swamp, and no armor in Charlock are all enabled. Very fast XP curve will be employed with small map generation. Some flag combinations and interactions to note include the alternate run algorithm with easy Charlock. So the alternate run algorithm changes the enemy agility penalty when the hero attempts to flee from battle to be based on where the encounter takes place instead of which enemy is encountered. Easy Charlock changes the Group 4 agility modifier from 1 to 0.75. The interaction comes into play in Charlock, where all enemies will have a 0.75 modifier applied. This makes most enemies slightly more difficult to run from, but the Stoneman, Armored Knight, and Red Dragon slightly easier. The asterisk highlights that the top floor of Charlock, the one that's lit, has a lower modifier applied compared to the rest of the castle. And then, like Week 1, the combination of random weapon prices with summer sale will tend to skew prices to be even lower than usual. When dealing with randomized values, you may find it beneficial to take notes during gameplay to highlight important discoveries. Like Week 1, battle rewards and shop prices are randomized, so marking enemies worth fighting is important, as are potential equipment upgrades if unaffordable at first. Though enemy stats aren't randomized this week, their abilities are, so certain ones may be worth noting for later. As we are featuring modifications to the run calculations this week, it may also be beneficial to plan your Charlock readiness parameters by reviewing a table such as this, demonstrating the odds of successfully running from enemies during the final descent, especially since those values will look and feel different compared to standard flags. A variety of additional resources are available to cope with these and other flags featured in the league, all of which are available in the DWR Discord. As I noted earlier, I will discuss my thought process in approaching each flag set, and note strategic decision-making as I go. Of course, your mileage may vary, as not all seeds are created equally. Everyone's strategic preferences and risk tolerances may be different, and my ideas, frankly, may not simply represent the most optimal strategies. Let's get into the gameplay, shall we? So I'll be providing post-game analysis and commentary as we go through the run here. I ran this seed a couple of weeks ago, so I don't remember exactly how everything played out, but I do remember the primary story beats. As usual, I will be calling out my strategic decision-making and thought processes throughout the seed. I'll also make sure to annotate any particularly good or perhaps bad or incorrect decision-making that I make along the way. Hopefully this provides some perspective from an experienced runner as to how I may approach the flags or approach the seed or just how things progress. Alright, as we get started here, we're going to have a number of things happen quite quickly. So in this flag set, we have randomized chest contents, so we'll have to pay attention to what we get right off the bat. We also have no keys necessary, so we'll have a third gold chest as it turns out here. Meager starting stats, but we do have the spell of heal, which is nice for survivability. With no keys, it's very common to walk out of and then back into the throne room, the pirouette as it were. That allows us to increment the chest counter and fill that array from 1, 2, and 3 from the beginning, also now filling 6, 7, and 8. So after we pick up 2 more chests, the 9th and subsequent will be grindable. Fighter's Ring here in the treasury, as well as a cursed belt. Chest number 3 is an herb. So we'll fill up on herbs here, why not? They're free. And this is something that can be done regardless of whether the keys are on or off. If you have an extra key at the start, you can do the same thing. Alright, we've got a gold chest in the center. So, with summer sale plus random weapon prices, generally speaking, most of the equipment that you're going to want to purchase is going to be very inexpensive. Again, it's certainly still possible to have things at a pretty high price point, but it's very likely you're going to get what you need at a relatively cheap cost. So, I like to go up to around 10,000 or so. This allows me some buffer. I can take a couple of deaths, I can buy incremental upgrades as soon as I see them, and I probably will never have to worry about cash the rest of the seed. So, it only takes about 3 seconds to pick up an additional chest, which is somewhere around 600 to 700 gold, so usually I like to get a decent amount to start. Certainly can get away with less, though. Especially since the Stone's Cave, in its vanilla spot under the castle, has Erdrick's armor, and now all of a sudden, Big Swamp, that thing that is very obvious as we walk outside here, is completely neutralized. So while we had heal and a decent hit point pool, which would have allowed us to get out to dry land, hopefully get some grinding in, pick up some levels, this makes a massive difference toward just completely obliterating the challenge of that part of the flag set. Tablet Cave down here just to the southwest of start, another gold chest. Again, anytime that you have flags that alter what can be in treasure chests, in this case no magic keys will be available, is going to increase the number of gold chests to compensate for those now empty chests, as it were. Next thing to do, and really one of the best things to do in these types of seeds, is to grind early and often. Now, one difficulty I will have, I only have 5 attack power, so really slime and red slime are the primary targets for me at this stage. If I had a damage-dealing spell, perhaps if we had picked up torches or fairy water in the throne room or in the treasury, we would have had the opportunity to do more significant damage. But we really don't have that right now. The reason why the grind is so important early is because while enemies have their vanilla stats in this flag set, they have randomized rewards. So we finally now have an enemy. I can't really do great damage against the Drakey, and it has Hurtmore. That's a problem. See if we can get lucky enough. We can. Remember that 5 attack power was boosted by the 2 attack power from the Fighter's Ring that allowed us to do consistent damage to the Drakey. That gets us up to level 2, where we learn Hurt. But with enemies being so potentially lucrative with the randomized XP and gold rewards, it's very likely that easy enemies are going to give us the biggest gains. At least relative to risk and reward. So for example, that golem that punched me back to start a few moments ago might only be worth a handful of experience points, despite being one of the most difficult enemies to tackle in the game. Meanwhile, although the Drakey isn't giving us much, we now have the opportunity to take out a ghost and see, well, it too doesn't give much, but again, it's enough at least to get us to level 3. Good strength gains here at the start. What about the slime? Is the slime lucrative? For a slime, yes, but again, not great. Enough to get us off the ground, again, continuing to level up, kind of 1 per battle. Unfortunately, we're now strong enough that some of these early game enemies can run away. They also have some nasty abilities. The Ghost with Weak Fire Breath, the Drakey with Hurtmore. So far, they haven't been too problematic, and Erdrick's Armor really putting in the work here, not only with the protection from Hurtmore and breath attacks, but also the boost to our HP value without having to cast Heal over and over again. Walking regen's pretty clutch. So none of the enemies here seem particularly good. I now have enough attack power that I can start trying to fight the Zone 1 and 2 enemies. Remember, Zone 0 can have everything up to and including the Scorpion in terms of difficulty, whereas Zones 1 and 2, which are East and West and North and South respectively, from the starting zone, can have enemies up to the Wolf in difficulty. While I don't think I would be too successful against a Wolf, I definitely can start taking out some of these earlier mid-game enemies, your Warlocks and Metal Scorpions and Druins and Drolls and things like that, see if we can find one that's worth its weight in experience. I think the Warlock qualifies over 50 just for taking him out, 18 more strength, so we are quite strong for this early level despite not having any equipment. Well, no offensive equipment anyway. Yet another level up. Another reason why doing this in the early game is really helpful is that we know what our level up points are going to be. We're using the 50% XP curve here. So if you know the vanilla values, cut those in half, and that's where we're going to level up. So we know that we can get quite a few levels here in the early game. That's only going to help with survivability. We're going to pick up spells like Heal or Heal More. We're going to pick up utility spells like Sleep and Stop Spell. And eventually, when we don't want to fight the easy enemies anymore, we can cast Repel, hopefully, as well. Now, if I didn't have Heal to start, and if I weren't able to take out that Drakey with my very low attack power, that's where it gets a little bit dicey. So these seeds have the ability to be particularly nasty if we don't have things like Torch or Fairy Water or good starting strength or lots of Swamp near start without Erdrick's Armor. So again, it's going to depend on the individual seed, but generally speaking, the game is giving us a lot of opportunities with 2 treasure chests in the throne room, 4 treasure chests in the treasury, and then maybe something else in the basement to get started that way. And if not, you can always walk around, look for a town. Might not be easy to get to one, but you might be able to find one. And if you can, chances are, even if there are no gold chests anywhere, you will have the one in the throne room behind the throne. Since no keys are required, that will always be gold, so you will always have at least 500 bucks to your name when you leave. And hopefully that's enough to buy at least something. Alright, very quickly here we've reached level 10. Metal Scorpion, by far the best enemy that we've located so far, worth well over 100 experience points per. So taking note of which enemies to fight, which enemies to avoid, certainly important in this flag set. Anytime you have randomized XP and gold rewards, you want to spend as much time fighting the good things and as much time avoiding the bad things as you can. Anytime you're spending fighting things that are worth 5, 8, 10, 12 experience, especially beyond levels 1, 2, and 3, are just wasting a lot of time. And these flags are fairly quick, again, generally speaking. So even wasting, 5 seconds here, 8 seconds there, 10 seconds there, over and over throughout a seed can really add up. So another thing to consider, although the early grind is critically important for survivability and success in exploration, there's a couple things going for us that kind of pushes us out into exploration. In this case, we already have a healing spell. I already have Erdrick's armor, so I'm safe from that perspective. I certainly have pretty decent attack power to this point. And some of the other flags in play also make it a bit easier to explore. In particular, we're talking about the alternate run algorithm. So the alternate run algorithm changes the way the agility is penalized from enemies, and the agility is used compared to the hero's agility to determine whether or not you can successfully run or not. So typically it's dependent on the enemy in question. So for example, your slimes and red slimes, drakeys, ghosts, your group 1 enemies, which is basically the bottom third, if you will, of the enemies in the enemy table, get a penalty of 75% to their agility in the run calculation. So if they have an agility of 10, only 2.5 of it is being used against the hero. So it's very likely to run from those. And then as the enemies get stronger, it goes all the way to no penalty. The alternate run algorithm changes that so that it's not dependent on which enemy you run into, it's where you encounter the enemy. In this case, the overworld is now where that penalty is the greatest. Doesn't matter if it's a red slime or a red dragon, both are penalized the same, so red dragons now become much, much, much less scary in terms of being able to run, at least on the overworld. Alright, we've moved on to the exploration phase here. We have found some equipment upgrades. We've got the town of Cantlin here, 3 shops to check, and no keys necessary, so all of them are accessible from the beginning. We pick up the large shield, which is nice. Passed on the copper sword, and notice the full plate, still worth over 5,000 gold despite random prices and summer sale. But you can still find some expensive gear. Of course, we have Erdrick's armor, so it doesn't matter. Aha, the bottom shop has the goods. Flame sword and silver shield, both of which are at deep discount prices. So the only things we're going to be buying for the rest of the game are just things like herbs, dragon scale, fairy water, stuff like that. While we're here, we'll check for coordinates as well. Old man says go forth and fight, so no coordinates. No counting required, which also means likely no princess rescue. No need for her for either her GPS ability or for her measurements as to whether or not we're going to level up soon or not. We're already full on herbs, so no need to fill up there, but we can buy a dragon scale for 2 more defense. So speaking about the alternate run algorithm, the bottom line is exploration becomes significantly more... Again, I won't say easy, because those enemies, if you fail from them, can still absolutely decimate you. Their agility is penalized in the run algorithm. You still can't do much damage to them without appropriate attack power, and they can still do a whole lot of damage to you. So even a single run fail can be, fatal. But it certainly opens things up a little bit. The other thing is, with the very fast leveling curve and with these random XP rewards from enemies, getting experience generally isn't that much of a struggle. Maybe getting off the ground at the very beginning, and maybe at the end just to find the best place to grind most efficiently. But generally speaking, you're going to be able to get experience without too much trouble, so you need to make the right call as to when to stop grinding and when to pursue exploration. In this case, I think I may have done a tiny bit too much grinding, but it's hard to say. Certainly our stats are not good enough to win here at level 12. The fear would be is that as I walk around and continue to just hack away mindlessly at things that I encounter, that I'm going to achieve Go stats before I've found all the things. Alright, we've looped successfully around down to the south, east, north, and then back to the west. We saw this cave across the water, accessible not from Tanthagil, but now we have it. It is the Swamp Cave. We're able to walk through. Green Dragon on the spike tile, not particularly good, at least in terms of rewards. So that plays into what we've been talking about as well. It's not just important to identify the enemies that are good grind targets, it's important to note where they are as well, because whereas in standard flags it's quite common to do most, if not all, of your grinding, especially in the end game, on spike tiles, whether that's in Hawksness or in the Swamp Cave, it's very unlikely that that's the case when you have random rewards, because very likely those enemies are going to be relatively difficult to take out and not provide much benefit, whereas there might be very easy one-shottable enemies that are quite lucrative. But if you encountered one 5 minutes in, are you going to remember where that was 25, 30, 40, 50 minutes later? So it's important to perhaps annotate that on a map, if you map as you play. Alright, Swamp Cave backdoors into Garenham. Nothing important in the back of Garenham. Another Dragon Scale that we already purchased. A couple of empty chests, which would have been herbs. Rogue Scorpion's another pretty valuable enemy, nearly 200 experience. There's another factor when it comes to repel. I don't think it came up necessarily in week 1, but it certainly can come up here, is a lot of these weak enemies are the ones I really want to fight. So is repel beneficial in the exploration phase? And again, it's a difficult question to answer. If you're content that you have a perfect place that you want to grind, and you want to focus only on exploration for now, you can throw repel up. Potentially miss out a lot of experience as you walk around. Or you can continue to fight, maybe find an even better target, an even better location, or just happen to get the levels you need along the way and not have to do a dedicated grind later. So it's definitely, whereas in standard flags it's typically obvious you want to have repel up as soon as you have it pretty much all the time, it's not necessarily the case in this set. Level 13 already. Demon Knight doing Demon Knight things, dodging, dodging, dodging. Despite that, 176 is hard to pass on. Definitely gonna pass on the Golem though. I haven't mentioned it specifically here, but since Hurtmore is turned off in this seed, we will not be learning it, so there really is no added incentive to grind looking for the Hurtmore spell to accelerate any sort of grind along the way. Dracula, another pretty good enemy. Again, some seeds are much more stingy with the experience, some are much more generous. This one seems to be relatively generous overall. Continue to walk around. We found the rainbow drop turn-in, but alas, we don't have any of our quest items yet. We did see, once we went south and west from Garenham, that we looped back to Tanthagil, so this is one continent, just connected by Swamp Cave in different areas. Way up here to the northeast, we're finding the Grave. So we've got 5 treasure chests here. We're still looking for all of our quest items, Erdrick's Sword. Starting off with the gold. The harp, that's quest item number 1. And the curse belt. I believe it's our second curse belt, and with no coordinates, that means Cole and Hawksness will each have something. And right next door to the grave, you know what? It's convenient. We just got the harp, we can turn it in for the staff right away. Opting not to deep dive grave, I don't entirely disagree there. It is a bit of a hike to check those last 2 spots. Is it worthwhile? Perhaps, perhaps not. It's always a good decision if there's something there, and it's a terrible one if it's not. You could also continue exploration here, see what else is beyond. Other things to consider as to whether or not you want to dive. Do you have additional places to explore that are in the area? In this case, we did. Looks like everything beyond it was a dead end. Do you have the outside spell, which would help facilitate getting out of that cave once you dive through? Do you have the appropriate resources to both make a successful dive and escape afterwards? In this case, we do. And if you don't, I mean, you can still death warp out. But your stats need to be amenable to making that happen, and with Erdrick's armor, silver shield... Yeah, at level 13 it might be a little bit difficult to do unless there's something spectacularly scary down there. Right, opting to skip bottom grave, we'll come back to it should we need to. Fought the blue dragon, probably was not necessary. Red dragon there, again, relatively easy to run from here on the overworld. Much different story when it comes to Sharlock, of course, but still easier than it would be otherwise. We've looped all the way back around to the town of Garenham. Instead of going through, going to continue exploration nearer to Tanthagil. So it appears north of the castle is completely covered at this point. The only thing we may need to go back for in the northeast is the bottom grave, and then northwest is where the rainbow drop is. Well, apparently sometimes, despite the run algorithm being modified to be easier, the game still can say, no. No. Alright, at long last, another town. It's Hawksness. We know something will be here. Might not be something we need, but the odds are pretty good that it is. We still have Death Necklace and Flute available. We also have the stones and token that we need. Erdrick's Sword. So, 3 in 5, let's say, required. 1 in 5 with the Death Necklace could be helpful. Fairy Flute, maybe less so. Okay, green dragon easily dispatched. And it's the flute, of course. Probably the least useful. The only case I think it would have any sort of utility here is if there's a golem on the spike tile in Charlock. We're not going to be wanting to grind or fight golems. They are a lot of hit points, and although we haven't killed one, the odds that it's worth taking one down for the XP gains are pretty small. Goldman pretty decent as well. Anything in the triple digits, again, it's hard to put a specific number on it because it will depend on the seed. Sometimes everything is very stingy and something over 50 is pretty good. Others, there's so many enemies that are over 100, 150, 200 plus that you really want to be selective. Alright, Twin Cities, we made a quick Brexit and move on to Coal. Nothing in Brecconary for us, that would be beneficial. Death Necklace in Coal. Which again, still missing 2 quest items, as well as the sword. Cave to the south of the Twin Cities. I think at this point, the only cave we're missing is the Mountain Cave. We'll have 5 more chances to find what we need here. In addition to that, we've got Rim still to find. That could also have a quest item for us. If not, we're left with the grave that we passed on earlier. Alright, I think that's the first wizard we've taken out, and definitely not worth it. Taking notes as to which enemies are lucrative and not, which can be skipped comfortably, which have nasty abilities. I did not do that for the seed, but I would generally recommend doing that. Every little time save and efficiency that you can add into your play is just going to help in these relatively fast flags. Alright, the Cave of Torches. So far, 3 treasure chests left, still looking for 2 quest items and the sword. Well, there's one of them, that's the Stones of Sunlight. Quest item number 2 to join the Silver Harp, which has already been turned in for the staff. Gold. And more gold. Well, now, only 3 chests exist still outside of Charlock. One of the 3 will have to have the token. The sword can also be in any of those, as well as the 7 chests in Charlock. Recall that no armor in Charlock was enabled for this seed. We found the armor right away under the castle, so it wasn't tremendously relevant. You can certainly factor that into your decision-making when it comes to what to dig and what not to dig later on. Also, what to explore for. In this case, we have a single chest in Remolder in a town that we haven't located yet. Is it worth scouring the lands to try to find that one missing location versus go to one spot that we already know exists, we know right where it is, and it has 2 checks? Now, one thing in this case is we're really looking for 2 items, not 1. Granted, 1 could be in Charlock. But it's the fact that the grave is kind of far away. It's way up in the northeast corner of the map. And 2, this is a small map. It's not tiny by any means, but it is smaller than what we would consider standard flags at 120 by 120. So the chances of us finding Rim relatively close by are pretty decent. Unfortunately, Rim was not particularly helpful. Yet another gold chest to add to my pile of money that I'm never going to spend. As they say, you can't take it with you. So the only remaining chests are in the grave. So diving grave, you know, it's not an attractive option most times. But it does seem to be required this time. Passing by Garenham once again. I really don't need to be fighting this. I think just frustrated by the inability to run, despite how easy it should be. Note that I'm still electing not to use the repel spell. Again, it's difficult to say exactly when one should pull the trigger on that. We're still getting pretty good experience across the board, so I don't think it's an absolute necessity, although the stats here at level 15, I don't have them immensely clearly in front of me, but we've gotten pretty strong. We have the Flame Sword. Erdrick Sword is only going to improve that. Well, Erdrick Sword isn't here. Neither is the token. But the token will be somewhere, and that somewhere is downstairs. I think I'm just double checking. It's like, I don't already have it, right? I'd feel kinda dumb if I already had it in the inventory and I was doing all this extra checking for nothing, but no. The token is in the very last place it could be. As we head to the bottom here, it should be a relatively short walk, just straight west back across the bridge and all the way to the northwest corner to find the Rainbow Drop turn-in. But one thing we haven't specifically seen, astute observers may have noticed, is Sharlock Castle itself. So we don't know for sure where it is. Druin, 300 experience, gets us to level 16. Or Sleep and Repel. Now, that answers the question about when's the right time to pull the trigger on Repel. It's when you have it. We didn't have it yet, so we couldn't have used it until now. And sure enough, no? Okay. There it is. It's debatable whether or not it's faster here to return and walk back versus just walk straight west. Not sure which is correct in this case. It's probably pretty close to the same. So I can't blame either decision. But speaking of Sharlock, there's really only one place it can be. Again, we've explored northwest and northeast here. Southwest is where we found Hawksness, Brecconary, Coal, and the Mountain Cave. Southeast is where we found Rim. So really, east central is the only place we haven't been yet. So Sharlock has to be in that direction. It has to be accessible south and then east of Cantlin. So there's really only one direction to go. We'll heal up likely in Cantlin and walk toward Sharlock, assuming that we'll be good to go once we find it. One thing I could do here is pick up some fairy waters along the way. I don't have any in the inventory. That said, I don't think they're going to be worthwhile in terms of offensive capability, so it's really only for utility as repel as we dive through the dungeon. And given the stats that we have, I can tell you, I don't think it's going to be a close fight once we pick the sword up. Well, there's the edge of Sharlock. Is it accessible from here? It is. And this is really the only direction for us left to explore, so it makes sense. So as we head into Sharlock Castle here, it won't be exactly the same here on the top floor, but this is where the alternate run algorithm plus Easy Sharlock comes into play. Of course, Easy Sharlock is a bit of a misnomer in terms of what the actual flag does. It changes the Group 4 run penalty modifier from 1 to 0.75. So normally that only affects the Stone Man, the Armored Knight, and the Red Dragon. So they basically get a 25% penalty in their agility score, which gives the hero roughly, depends on exactly what the agility is, somewhere around, in the end game, given average agility values at this time, something around between 70 and 90, let's say, about an extra 10 to 12% chance to run each time. In this case, with the alternate run algorithm also active, what's taking place here is, again, based on where the location is when we get the encounter is what's determining that run modifier. In this case, all enemies in Sharlock, outside the top floor, are being subject to that 0.75 value. This means that the Stonemen, Armored Knight, and Red Dragons in particular are easier to run from because normally they have no penalty, whereas the other 7 enemies are typically groups 2 or 3, which have a lower value. So they have a more penalty and are even easier to run from, so they are slightly harder. Again, somewhere around the same amount. 10, 12-ish%. So it is something to factor in. Not sure why I didn't pull the trigger there on an herb. Definitely the thing to do. No reason to hold on to them forever. Should we use one here for sure, but elect not to. There it is. That's the smart play. Would have been smarter to use one or even a couple earlier, but we'll take it. Opting to skip the vanilla sword chest. Again, only one chest there. It's quite a walk in order to get that one check. And it's a 6 in 7 chance to have the sword down here on the bottom floor. Worth noting that the alternate run algorithm and Easy Sharlock does not impact the ambush rate in any way, so still have to deal with the ambushes in the same frequency as usual. Alright, the Sharlock Pyramid. We found a lot of things that aren't the sword. Ah, top of the pyramid. So attack power, I think in this case, is 138, if I recall correctly, based on looking at the stats earlier. So 9 to 19 damage, 14-ish on average. With 13 heal mores, I don't think this fight will be too much of a problem. I would probably expect something in the range of about 10 heal mores being more than enough here, so this should be a pretty comfortable fight. Fortunately, we did pick up a fairy water there in the treasury, so a little bit of protection in terms of avoiding at least the wizard encounters. Blue dragon on the spike tile shouldn't be a problem. And on the Dragon Lord will be declared a fool. This is definitely a situation where playing the herb game, trying to min-max HP into the fight, probably not necessary. I think we'll have an overabundance of resources, but if it's close, it's usually worth trying to bait out a physical attack or stop spell. We do get first strike, I think even further clinching that this is going to be a pretty free fight. And Dragon Lord in this flag set, since stats are not randomized, 150 to 165 max HP. Gotta be a little careful with the menuing here, although the game shouldn't allow you to cast Repel in battle. It will just spit out an error message and allow you to choose again. Usually, you're menuing up 2 from heal down to Hurtmore and then up to heal more here, so just 1 menu input instead of 2. Not that anybody would very often rely on it as an actual strategy, but it is worth noting that you don't have the option to go for that YOLO last-ditch effort to try to Hurtmore against DL2 if the fight isn't going well, if Hurtmore isn't available. Again, probably doesn't factor into the strategic decision-making, but it is indeed a thing. Swinging on 12. We had done more than enough damage to that point. Even a minimum roll would have taken out the Dragon Lord. And there you have it, just over 40 minutes, a fairly fast completion of a seed, despite the fact that we full cleared everything with the exception of the vanilla sword chest in Charlock. So pretty straightforward overall. Well, there you have it. So again, kind of going through week 2 here with the flags that we have, things to keep in mind. Obviously, the alternate run algorithm combined with Easy Charlock does impact not only your exploration propensity and availability during the early and mid games, it certainly is going to impact your ability to get through Charlock in the end game, so plan accordingly. I think the general strategy is to grind early and often. Your weak enemies tend to be very safe to fight, but also give enough value for each kill. But you need to know when to pivot and explore. As we saw in this one, it kind of worked out that it was perfect, that I leveled up just to the right level right as soon as I picked up the last item that I needed, but it very easily could have been that I was ready to go much sooner and didn't have everything yet. So knowing when to pivot, having spells like Heal and Heal More, Repel are pretty important for the exploration phase. Maybe Repel less so in this flag set, but things like Sleep and Stop spell can also be very helpful. Although, again, overall, easier overworld exploration in this flag set. And those are really the two big things. Keep in mind as well, with armor not in Charlock, you're likely to find it more quickly in this flag set. If you don't have access to it early, your healing spells become that much more important, so consider that as well. Anyway, that's going to just about do it for me. Hopefully this introduction to playthrough is helpful in highlighting some of the unique challenges of this flag set, as well as some strategies and resources to overcome them. I do hope you consider joining us in the 2025 Dragon Warrior Randomizer Winter League as a player, volunteer, or audience member. Relevant documentation about the league and a link to the DWR Randomizer Discord are available in the description. If you enjoyed this content, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, please feel free to follow me at twitch.tv/Diabetes2 for live DWR racing and other gameplay as we let the final credits and stats run out here. Thanks again for watching, have a good day, and we will see you next time.